Welcome everyone, welcome. This is the third panel of Unity's Puttin' in Work panel series. The name of the panel today is Get on the Good Foot, Online Trends, Opportunities for Breakers, Street and Hip Hop Dancers. Really excited to be moderating the panel with all these wonderful individuals today. My name is Rebecca Harrison. I'm the Executive Director of Unity Charity. And for those folks who are maybe joining us for the first time, welcome, and also just a little bit about what we do. So Unity is a national nonprofit organization that uses hip-hop art forms to help young people develop resilience and to promote well-being. We've been around for about 12 years. We work all across the country, which is kind of actually reflected in our panel. We got folks tuning in from Whitehorse and the West Coast, Ontario. I'm pretty sure all of our participants in the room today, we did partner with some organizations from across Canada to do some promotion. So hoping that we've got some folks from Winnipeg, from Halifax, probably Ontario, West Coast. There should be, lots of entry-level and emerging dancers here. Again, hip-hop dancers, breakers, street dancers. Don't be shy about using the chat function. Make sure you go ahead and share your socials, share the socials of your cats and your pets as well, if that feels right for you. But yeah, big each other up, follow, connect. Don't be shy about bragging and like showing us, your latest clips or whatever. Throw it in there. Let's follow and support and get to know our community from across Canada. So just a couple quick things to start out, some housekeeping stuff. There will be a recording of this panel available after the fact. It will be closed captioned for folks with diverse abilities so people can read along. As far as the kind of structure of our session goes today, we've got, I'm going to send big ups out to Maddie, who's the Unity Charity host right now. Maddie is going to be doing some pulling different links and references that our panelists make and throwing them into the chat so that people can easily follow along. Line up all of your tabs so that you can continue your research and learning after we wrap up the panel. If you have any tech issues, Maddie should be able to try and help you out as well. And then finally, she's going to be putting text versions of the questions that I'm asking into the chat. Again, for those of you who it's easier to kind of follow along reading instead of listening, those are going to be there as well. If you have questions, make sure that you submit them into the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen instead of putting them in the chat so that we can make sure that we get them to the panelists instead of having to sift through everybody's bigging each other up and following in the chat. As well, there's going to be a really quick evaluation survey following the session. So as soon as you close your Zoom window, it's going to redirect you to like a 30-second survey. If you have the time, we super appreciate any feedback. This is the first time we've run this kind of panel series. So if you've got ideas, thoughts about things you'd like to see us connecting in the future, as someone said, we got an all-star panelist here today. Unity's community is wide and deep, and so we can, pull together all kinds of people from across the country to talk about things that you want to hear. So throw it in the survey. We definitely want to hear what you think and what you want to see in the future. Really important, want to say a big thank you to our sponsors, TD. So big thanks to TD. They're supporting this panel series, the whole Puttin' in Work panel series, as well as Unity's Artist Development and Training Program through the TD Ready commitment. So as a part of TD's goal to help people feel a sense of belonging in their communities, they support arts and culture events, initiatives, and organizations like Unity that amplify diverse voices. And that's kind of what this session is all about. That's like a big part of what Unity concentrates on. It's important to us, wanting to make sure that hip hop artists from across the country have a chance to grow and learn and shine and connect with one another. So big ups to TD. Thank you for supporting this event, and big thank you for being such incredible allies to Unity for a long time. Really appreciate it. Just before I get to introducing our wonderful panelists here in a more detailed way, I had a task in front of me trying to trim down people's bios. You guys are impressive people, I'll say that. But I just want to do a couple of important acknowledgements. So first, I'd like to acknowledge and really express gratitude to be connecting with all of you today from land that is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In addition, I'd like to invite everybody just to take pause for a moment and acknowledge the fact that the ability to connect with one another online is a huge privilege that is not equally afforded to households in Canada. There's a massive digital divide that has really been highlighted and exacerbated since the onset of COVID. Only 30% of Indigenous households on reserve have access to the internet, as compared to 99% of households in urban centers. So in delivering these panels online, in learning about how to excel in online spaces as industries has shifted, we're all kind of collectively contributing to this divide between artists that have access to internet access and artists who don't. So I wanted to invite people to consider what we can do to try and lessen this divide. A big one is educating ourselves on the Canadian government's rural infrastructure commitments, using our voices and our votes to hold them accountable to their targets, using the influence and energies that you have available to you to support Indigenous artists, communities, and organizations in ways that honor your own models for activism and allyship. And in particular, I just want to share, we can maybe throw this in the chat, an organization called Internet Society. You can find them at internetsociety.org. They're doing really incredible work in Canada and abroad to ensure that people have equitable access to the internet. So if you're interested in learning a little more about what this looks like in Canada, you can head to their website, support, read about the information that they have compiled there. It's really enlightening. There's a lot of work to be done. Additionally, as an organization, Unity that achieves impact through hip-hop art forms, which are products of the Black lived experience, we'd also like to acknowledge the legacy of the Black community in the founding and propagation of the art forms that we work through. Another, again, we can do more than acknowledge, an invitation to action here. I want to invite people to consider how we can collectively lend our energies to ensuring that Black artists and communities benefit from the popularity and the widespread commercialization of hip hop culture. We can continue to hold media and industry accountable for the uplifting and the respect of hip hop art forms and culture, educating when we see them referred to with ignorance and stigma, happens all the time. Let's continue to promote the value and importance of hip hop as a space for communities to protest and resist the systems that cause and perpetuate their oppression. Let's continue to remember and learn about the Black roots of hip hop, paying homage to the OGs who came before. And finally, as we do in community all the time, let's make sure we keep lifting as we climb, to pave the way for Black youth to thrive in the hip hop communities that we move through so that they can find resilience and pride within the culture that is a legacy of their heritage. That said, lots to think about, lots of work to do, always got to be vigilant in trying to move things forward. And now, without further ado, I'm very excited to be introducing, again, the star-studded cast, these panelists, wonderful panelists. Thank you all of you for joining us today. I'm really excited for the conversation. And so I'm going to start by introducing Amy Wright. Amy, welcome.
Hey.
Since her professional beginning in 1995, Amy Wright has become one of Canada's most in-demand choreographers. Her work includes feature films, movies of the week, television series, reality TV, stage musicals, including Canada's prestigious Shaw Festival, and over 75 commercials. As a producer, the Next Step television show is one of Amy's most well-known projects, with 7 seasons, over 200 episodes. It's watched by millions around the world. Amy has been with the series since its inception as casting director, choreographer, and producer. Having coordinated over 500 unique dance moments for the series on screen, Amy has been an integral part of the planning, premiere performances, including sold-out live world tours and The Next Step Live, the movie, a feature film that has amassed over 3.5 million views on YouTube. Incredible. Amy, we're so happy to have you here and looking forward to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. It's really awkward to being read your bio to without blushing. I'm like, ah! Anyway, thank you for having me.
Slide off screen while I say it. Guys, feel free to cover your faces while I talk about you if that makes you feel better. No problem. Next up, I'd like to introduce Kosi Eze. Born in Nigeria, Kosi began to hone her creative influence through her love for music at the age of 18. As a young woman, she drew many connections between her ancestral heritage and the hip-hop culture, which she became increasingly involved in. Since her move from her homeland, this Enugu native discovered her passion for dance and performance art and has gone on to excel in many competitive spaces within dance and globally. Also, love, you know, Kosi's done a lot of work as a Unity artist with Unity, teaching the youth through our programs, performances, all that kind of stuff. Big love, Kosi. We're so happy to have you here today.
Blessings, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Amy, you're so right. It's very, very interesting to have your bio read to you.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, got to do it. People want to know who you are. All right, Arthur, you're next. Arthur Tiojanco began his breaking career in 2003 and has worked his way to be recognized as a leading individual in the Vancouver breaking scene. He's a member of Surrey's oldest active breaking crew, Floor Storm, and has competed locally and internationally. In addition to being self-taught, he has also taken opportunities to learn from some of the best breakers in the world. Arthur began teaching breaking in 2006 and has taught in schools, dance studios, and community centers. In 2007, Arthur organized and hosted his first breaking competition. Since then, he's organized over a dozen events in the Lower Mainland with his company, Funk and Soul Entertainment. Arthur, coming in from the West, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, it's kind of weird, and I think it needs a little updating. So
well, I had to do some trimming too. I had to do a little bit of trimming, so I just kind of like cherry picked everybody's bios. These could have been longer, guys.
True.
Based on what you sent me, remember that for next time.
This is maybe the first lesson is how to have a bio that actually represents you.
There you go.
Yeah. Next panel. Next, I'm really excited to welcome Roy Urbanozo. Roy is the founder of the Dance Plug Canada, a community organization dedicated to sharing knowledge and information about dance while sparking conversations about important issues within our industry. Roy has always been on the managerial and operational side of the dance industry, assisting artists for the past 10 years. Some of his career highlights include event management for BYOB Dance Competition Series and Goat Dance Competition, studio manager at the Underground Dance Center, and was most recently a host and producer for the Unplugged podcast. You can expect Roy to help assist and offer advice towards your career as a professional dancer. It's exactly why we have him here today. Roy, welcome. So excited to hear from you.
Thank you so much for having me. And just echoing the rest of the panelists too, yes, this is very awkward.
All right, last but not least, Sami. Stepping up to the plate. Sami Elkout Slinks has been an active member of the street dance and hip hop arts community since he started breaking in 2001. He's traveled all over Canada teaching, performing, and battling with his group, the Breadcrumbs Crew, which he was a founding member of in 2007. He also founded Ottawa's only street dance studio, the Flava Factory. Flava, show us your t-shirt there, Sami. Yay! Where he has since been providing opportunities to other street dancers and hip-hop artists. He most recently held the role as the general manager for Canada's largest Four Elements hip-hop festival, the House of Paint Festival of Urban Arts and Culture. He continues to push himself as an artist and arts administrator, setting an example for youth to rise up and reach their greatest potential. Love to see that, Sami, and so stoked to have you here.
Thank you.
Big up. Head to Flava Factory website. The t-shirt that he's wearing, I can personally confirm the Flava Factory t-shirts are incredible. I highly recommend them to everyone. It's been my favorite t-shirt since I went to Ottawa last year. I need to buy a new one because it's like forever. Okay. With that said, everybody introduced, we're all on the same page here, really excited to get into kind of our main panel content section. So just another reminder to people, if you got questions, throw them in the Q&A instead of in the chat for people who maybe just joined us. So I always, okay, an appearance, getting upstaged by Joy the cat there. Love to see that. So I always like to start in these conversations. I really like to start with the big picture and getting a sense of the, you know, the macro view and looking at sort of some of the major trends and shifts and what that means in the present and what it means for the future. So I don't think that anybody would disagree with the statement that COVID has really changed the game for arts, creative, and cultural industries. We've been hugely affected by COVID and the shift to online. And it has really exposed a lot of flaws in how industries are built, how much risk and precarity artists and organizers take upon themselves to be in this space. It's created a lot of psychological and financial turmoil for artists, dance companies, organizations. And I think more so, you know, we've been doing these panels in a number of different art forms, and I would say maybe more than any of the other art forms that we work in, at least, dancers have had to be so creative and so adaptive. Like, the Zoom medium is not built to showcase dance. Like, so I think there's a lot to talk about, and, you know, in the spirit of positivity, we're going to be looking today at what some of the challenges are and thinking about things that, you know, people are doing with their time, ways that we can find silver linings about what's happening while things sort of take their time shifting back to whatever the new normal is going to be. And we have a really incredible cross-section of individuals here who represent a lot of different elements of the dance industry, a lot of different pieces of that world. So I want to start by asking people a question that provides a perspective from these many angles about what people are seeing and how they're kind of planning ahead based on what's going on. So my first question is, what's one thing that COVID and the move to online has taught you about your industry, organization, or your individual arts practice, and how will you carry that learning into the future? So we're going to throw up the text. I know it's a long question. I've got Maddie just threw it into the chat there. So I'm going to put it to Amy first, if that's okay. Amy, take it away.
Well, I think in the past, when the world had the Great Depression and after the wars and things like that, everybody turned to entertainment. So when COVID first started popping up, I was like, well, we're infallible. Everybody needs the arts. It's how people get cheered up, and it's how people see silver linings, or it takes you away. In the Depression, it was, you know, all those 1940s movie musicals, they would take people away from the current state that was maybe sad or challenging or difficult. And for me, the day that Broadway closed, it was like a Thursday before March break, I just about lost my mind. You know, people are like, well, the NBA is shutting down. I'm like, okay. And I mean, I appreciate sports and everything, and that's certainly a big deal when those things happen. But theaters and film and entertainment is not supposed to shut down. That's supposed to be the thing that keeps everybody going and motivated. So it's been super interesting to see how quickly people turn to the arts, especially when we're often one of the things where funding is cut first. So, you know, everybody started binging more Netflix, more TV, looking for more movies. I don't know if you guys have checked now, like there's not much content coming out new because everything was shut down. So sadly, we are still the industry that's suffering the most, and it's going to take a long time to get back. Theater performances, people that did live shows, it's near impossible to get an audience now. So we're lucky that there were already some things turning online, like you could make your own, ideally make your own videos, or now we can have our own dance classes. But the biggest question that I don't even have an answer for is, how are we going to be making money rather than continuing to make free videos and promote ourselves? Ideally, the government kicks in, and we as artists certainly have jumped in and supported each other and rallied around each other, which is awesome. So I think COVID has brought the community closer. around the world. Like you could take a dance class anywhere now, as long as that person's on Zoom. But I'm not sure how things will adjust, and I keep hoping that maybe I can be a person to help eventually. I'm racking my brain for solutions on how we stay employed.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to hear you say that again in terms of if you were to frame that into like a learning for the future, like where you sort of feel like the industry felt more infallible than it really is.
Yeah.
And like, you know, like plan A, but plan B and plan C are important. And even when things go back to normal, it's like, I wonder if people will ever feel that sense of, you know.
And even before COVID, there were so many things, this is maybe a side topic, but where dancers were always asked to do, you know, MTV Music Video Awards will give you $50 or $100, you know, just so we've always been underpaid anyway. And
right.
Now we're actually some of the people that are needed the most to keep morale up around the world. Like arts takes you away, right? So
for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. I'm going to flip it down to Roy. Roy, one thing that COVID and the move to online has taught you about your industry, organization, or arts practice, and how will you carry that learning into the future?
So I think in comparison to the rest of the panelists, like our organization operates solely online, with the exception of maybe visiting events, which we can't do anymore, and also in-person podcasts. So that has been a bit of a transition for us. But I know that when we started the Dance Plug, we definitely wanted to, you know, share knowledge about the business of dance. And, you know, pre-COVID, we had struggled by getting the conversation started. And I guess throughout the year, you know, I guess most of our audience kind of lost interest in those types of questions. And for us, COVID has kind of been a blessing in disguise, because everyone is now at home and has no choice but to kind of look to their phones and see what's actually going on, right? So we bring back all these important topics, whether it be, I don't know, like financial literacy for artists, I don't know, like a bunch of different topics, and anything from accessibility to inclusion. And it has, you know, tremendously grown our account tenfold over the last like 4 months. So, you know, I think as we transition post-COVID, I'm hoping that, you know, a lot of people, especially in our audience, kind of sees, you know, what we want to do or what we want to achieve post-COVID. And that's why we're taking the time now to kind of provide those tools and that type of knowledge, so that artists are more prepared and can create, or at least make, more informed choices as the economy slowly opens up.
Awesome. And I think that's an interesting point that kind of speaks to what you're saying about people being online more, and what Amy was saying about, you know, a community coming together and people starting to look at like injustices that are baked into industries and to ways of people being paid or not paid. And like, again, maybe it can be silver lining, the start of something really great, where it's like, okay, we're more likely to be talking to one another, connecting cross geographical regions, and being like, this is BS, like $50 I've been here all day, like let's get some more standard rates going, or whatever it may be. Certainly I think people are finding ways to connect and convene and be more active in these kinds of things. And it's sort of those two parts conflating, right? Like the connection of we're all experiencing things collectively, and we also, you know, have power in that connectivity. So that's a really interesting point, Roy. Thank you. Sami, can I flip it down to you?
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing to keep in mind, like from my perspective, is I operate like a commercial, like community space. So it really is like about bringing people to the space. And right from the beginning, like the word social distancing, like just that, you know, concept really, really scared me. And it was something that I was worried about from the back. But like we shut our space down pretty early, like before we even needed to. And it was really like just following in solidarity with the city when they started shutting down their public facilities in Ottawa, when, you know, summer camps and stuff were starting to cancel. And this was like the Friday the 13th, like before, like the Friday the 13th, right? When everything started really getting crazy. So well before, like a couple weeks before, like other spaces had been told, like, all right, you got to shut down. And it was really a matter of us like being kind of aware of like where we stood. And, you know, like that next week that was coming up, that was March break. That was like the start of our spring semester, which was like our biggest season and definitely like, you know, the moneymaker for us that helps carry us through to the next September. So right from the bat, we were kind of like torn between, you know, fiscally, what do you do? And then like, you know, responsibly, what do you do? But like, we always sat in that spot of like, all right, we just got to, you know, bite the bullet and do the responsible thing. But, you know, we got a space and the space is sat empty from mid-March till now. And like, you know, people haven't been allowed in it. And, you know, I've taken a step back from like teaching personally the classes in the space. Had I been an artist like that was practicing and teaching dance a lot, I would definitely have jumped onto the online space. But really for me, it was just a matter of like, how do I keep the center available for artists? Because there aren't many facilities in Ottawa for people to attend like this. And then especially for street dance artists. So like we have one of the most multicultural studios in the city. And I can say that pretty frankly. And like, I'm not just talking about dance, I'm talking about like, you know, compared to yoga spaces, fitness spaces, like we have a very diverse spot. And that's shown like through, you know, the people that work there, right? The people that teach there. But that was one thing I think that some of the community that was coming to the studio didn't realize is that, right off the bat, when you were mentioning the access to internet and the access to resources and stuff, some of these things aren't always available to everybody, you know? And that was one of the things that we didn't want to put pressure on anyone to be like, all right, you got to teach a public class online and you got to figure out where you're going to do it. And you got to be able to have the internet to do it. I made the space available if people wanted to, but then once things got shut down, like people just did not want to attend, and that's totally, you know, reasonable. And we weren't really putting pressure on that. And a big reason for that is a bit of stubbornness for me, in the sense that there was a lot of people jumping on the online bit right off the bat, and it was getting a little noisy. And I think, you know, for us, like we were promoting other people that were doing it because we knew that they had the infrastructure, they were doing it. So we were promoting Unity stuff, you know, Love to Move Ottawa, like people from around our community, because that's kind of what we do. But in terms of like us having to put ourselves out there, like I was really not looking to put pressure on our instructors for that, because people were dealing with their own shit. Like people were dealing with their own lives, their own financial issues and all this stuff. And like taking a bit of time to like breathe and take a step back, I think was important, and definitely was for me. But it's still, you know, we're in August next week and space has still been shut down. But it has given me time to rethink the flow of the space and rethink the ability of using the space. And not just in the sense that, okay, we're running our own programming, we're running our own classes, but we have resources. We have, you know, 4 walls, air conditioning, like good air filters, bathrooms, all this stuff, speakers, you know, microphones, like all these kind of things that some people don't have access to. Like, how can we bring this forward to other artists? And part of that is not just like, okay, well, we're just going to stay in the dance sphere. Like, how can we use our space for the hip hop community in Ottawa? So we've been rethinking that. Like, we're trying to come up with ways to have like contactless rentals. So like almost Airbnb style, where people can just kind of log in, get into the space is open for them, they leave, and then we can kind of flip it and clean it. So this is good for like smaller companies that want to do a rehearsal, or people that want to film their own dance class but might not have space, might not have internet, and have like, you know, wicked graffiti backdrop. Like we got something like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, there was different ideas that we had, like, or like you mentioned, like our merchandise has been something that we've been pushing for a little bit as well. So we are actually opening up like a little shop within the studio, and then we've been pushing more merch online, and we're creating that shop to also be a space that's available for artists to consign some of their gear as well. So like if you're a visual artist and you want to sell some prints, or you're a music artist and you want to put some CDs out, or you're another dancer who's got merch as well, like we can showcase some of that. So we're really trying to think about our space more as a hub and not just like a dance studio. And part of that is like a little bit of a soft rebrand as, you know, the Flava Factory only street dance studio in Ottawa, as opposed to becoming the Flava Factory hip hop community studio. And like that gives us a chance to kind of rethink the space as opposed to the space just being a dance spot.
And that's really cool. That's like, I mean, pivot, the word of 2020.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really interesting thing. Like you said, we were talking about, you know, what are we learning? What has COVID taught us? And like in your example, it's like that there's actually there's all kinds of valuable resources that you have in the Flava Factory that can be deployed for your business for like revenue in like a whole multitude of different ways.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's such a good learning and something where it's like, okay, things are going to go back to whatever the new normal looks like.
Yeah.
But there are learnings to be had, and like there are ways that we can look at what is happening here, what this is showing us about who needs access in our communities, and like how can we become more resilient entrepreneurs, more resilient businesses, because we see in times like this how adversely affected the creative industries are, like in all ways.
Totally. And I think it's a matter of diversifying your revenue streams for something like that, and like thinking about, you know, as dancers we tend to maybe focus on performing, teaching, and like workshops. And those are really like all within kind of the same sphere as like you have to be in person, you have to be doing that. But there's other opportunities where dancers have like great names, great merchandise, things like this, that you can have like other small bits of revenue that are coming in. And that, you know, like our gear really helped us to carry forward rent during those months where we just didn't have anything and people were helping us out. That's not dance, but it's like because of our brand, because of our name, we've been able to build off that. So little streams and avenues, and obviously still have your big money maker, which hopefully comes back to dance class.
Yes, for sure. Awesome. Thank you, Sami. Okay, Kosi, one thing COVID and the move to online has taught you, and how are you going to carry that learning into the future?
Wow. I think I'm going to speak a little bit about the individual arts practice being mine. I realized in the onset of COVID that I was very much reliant in my arts practice on travel. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm a bit raspy.
No, you're good.
Yes, very reliant on travel, very reliant on the fact that I wouldn't necessarily be home all the time. And I think that's something that anybody who knows me on this panel can agree with. So in that, I realized how fragile the arts practice would be with COVID, being that I can't necessarily leave to go anywhere. And also realized for myself that I'm someone who is very dependent on individual or physical real-time interactions. And I thrive best as a teacher, so on and so forth. So in moving to, or even thinking about moving to the digital space, it brought a lot of headache because I didn't see myself as able to convey what I really wanted my message through a screen. So learning that about myself, learning that it is difficult to handle some of the emotions, or like Sami said, there are people who are living their lives. They have things outside of the dance that are affecting them as well. Learning to sort of consolidate the two and come to an understanding. That was the most important part of the beginning of COVID for me, and reflecting that in my arts practice. And I think the biggest thing I learned was that it just takes patience. It takes patience for me to be able to be an artist and reflect the times. And we are in such strange times. Yeah, and that's something I'm definitely carrying forward. As far as learning to be on here and to share, it's also taking time. Building through Zoom and learning how to use the platform and being able to share, like I said, the message, which I think is so profound for me at least. And yeah, it's been difficult. I'll say that.
Fair enough. And is there, so I mean, you said that you've kind of, you feel like you've learned some things about yourself and in this space. Is there, actually, you know what, I'm going to leave that follow-up question because it kind of goes into the next question. I'm going to leave it, I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to flip it to Arthur. Arthur, one thing COVID and the move to online has taught you about your industry, and how will you carry that learning into the future?
Yeah, I can speak from a couple of different perspectives. Since with VSDF, I'm the co-chair, but all the members of the board are volunteers. So none of us make our money through street dance, through teaching or events. It's all volunteer work. And it's, to be frank, it was a little bit of a relief that we didn't have 4 or 5 events coming up. We were planning a couple fundraisers, and I think by this point, VSCF would have been this weekend.
Right.
Like starting tomorrow, we would be grabbing all the equipment, setting up at Robson Square, setting up Boogaloo Academy, and it was a little bit of a relief that like all that work kind of got lifted off our shoulders, which was kind of nice, but at the same time, kind of sad, right? When we were thinking about our movement to online, if we were even going to do that, because we know we can't replicate the same feeling, the same vibe. Like Kosi came a couple of years and she knows what the vibe is. It's a magical vibe, being out downtown and, with everybody coming in and out of the space. It's something that we can't replicate online. But at the same time, as a personal, as a dancer myself, trying to find motivation to dance to keep up with my practice without events and competitions and like even in-person practices was difficult.
Right.
So, I ended up being engulfed in my work. I worked with the school district and I kind of focused all my stuff on that, all my energies in that, and I feel my dance kind of suffered, but at the same time, I didn't feel the motivation too. Kind of going into COVID, I was doing 100 days of practice. So I started at the beginning of the year and then I made it through, but once things got shut down, it was hard to motivate myself to be practicing in my living room and practicing by myself. But what I noticed was that, people would message me like, yo, like, keep it up, keep, giving me motivation to keep pushing forward.
That's
it's like, for me, hitting 100 days was my goal. Yeah. For a lot of people, going to that battle is a goal. Going to that event, having somewhere to showcase your art, having some place to express your art is super important. And that's something that we discussed as a team when we're like, we really don't have to throw the event because it's not going to be the same, but at the same time, we want to open up a space, have an opportunity for people to express themselves.
Yeah.
Granted, they could all do it on their own personal Instagram accounts, but it's just another goal for people to obtain, just another thing for them to do and to aspire to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I mean, everybody has made really good points on this one. And I think, again, it's that balance of that idea of like, okay, things are, again, I think more so than some of the other art forms that we've been doing these sessions in, it's like, and this segues perfectly into the next set of questions, is that, people are definitely waiting for things to get back to normal, back to a new normal. But for sure, so I want to talk a little bit, getting into what you were talking about, Arthur and Kosi getting there as well. Again, see, natural flow of the conversation here. It's all working out perfectly. Just talking a little bit about some of the psychological challenges and how people have managed to overcome some of those to actually, have some creative wins despite the challenge. Every artist that I've spoken to has expressed that they've faced some kind of mental, psychological, emotional barrier or hurdle staying active in their art. And like you said, Arthur, like whether it's a lack of Joy really wants to answer this question. We're going to give her the mic in a second. Like you said, Arthur, whether it's a lack of events or goals that people feel like they can safely work towards because everything is canceled, being stuck in a place that, like Sami said, not everybody has access to Wi-Fi. I think it's really important for us to name and normalize that this, that COVID is like exacerbating inequities in a major way. Like people who struggle to be connected or who relied on spaces, on libraries, on schools, on studios for space, maybe don't have those anymore. But again, as like, I want to say even the dancers even more so, like I've been so impressed by people's resilience and perseverance and how people have really dug deep to find creative and innovative ways to motivate themselves, to grow in their practice, despite the normal motivating forces being stripped away and being replaced by like barriers and distance. So I want to ask a couple of the panelists. I'm going to put it to Kosi, Arthur, and Sami. If you can tell us how you overcame a psychological or emotional hurdle that was affecting your creative. Sorry, let me start that again. I'm stuttering. Tell us how you overcame one psychological or emotional hurdle that was affecting your creativity or motivation, and what advice would you give to dancers or creative entrepreneurs who are facing the same challenge? So let me throw it to, I'm gonna throw it to Sami first. Sami, what do you think?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I think because I'm still kind of in the middle of some of that, you know, like it's, I think it's a matter of taking the time and taking the space as much as you need it for yourself, for whatever that is. I think on top of like, you know, yes, we're dealing with shit as dancers, but we're dealing with shit as human beings too, you know? And like at the very beginning, like I was cool. I was like motivated and down and like, okay, like, you know, we got a couple of weeks of this and then a couple more weeks and I was still like really pushing forward. And then like,
I'm going to be D's by the end of COVID.
Yeah.
Kind
and
of
then mid-May, my brother passed away, and then that was like super difficult for me. And like, to be completely frank, like it's been still difficult, and like studio shit and everything else just kind of went off to the side. And like, as much as I wanted to motivate myself to jump into that, I just knew I needed to take space for myself to deal with it. And you know, even still, like still dealing with it. Like I'm up in the Yukon right now. I'm going to be hosting a virtual like live event in a couple of weeks, but I'm quarantining for 2 weeks at my buddy's place. And you know, like this is time that I really needed to get away to shake up my tree, to shake up what was going on back home. So, you know, I think that we're talking about COVID, like those times have passed, but I think we got to understand, like, we're still in the middle of it. We're like in the eye of the storm right now, where things maybe are calm, but there's still like a bunch of shit we're going to have to deal with. And, you know, like I'm looking forward to September, where maybe schools start to get back in and things slowly start to pick back up again, but we're still on like shaky terms. Like we're on the fence right now, and we could fall on either side. And like, I think that's something that we got to keep in mind, you know?
Yeah.
So the best advice is like, do what you need to do for yourself. Like really dig deep, be honest with yourself, and like think about what it is that you need, and don't feel guilty or bad if you need to take a break and you need to take some time away. Like that money will come and go. That shit will come back. But if you can't get yourself balanced, if you can't get yourself right, then it's going to take a long time to put yourself back together.
For sure. And I think that's such an interesting point. Sami, incredible, you know, like to be overcoming that, finding ways to deal with like a loss like that. I know everybody in this space is sending you a lot of love right now. And I think you make a really good point, and it's something that Arthur referred to as well, is that so often we forget as creatives, or we forget as organizers, whether it's a for-profit business or as volunteers in our communities, that it is labor. It's labor at the end of the day, like, you know, and we see, like, you know, Arthur, for you to saying, okay, you know, this is largely a volunteer organization and we love it so much, but when it was canceled, we were all kind of relieved, you know, like and if that isn't so telling of like how much of ourselves we give to be able to create these spaces and these events and these experiences and to share our art with the world and to be able to create a space where other people can come together and share their art. That's such good advice, Sami, taking time and space and acknowledging and recognizing and appreciating yourself for the efforts that you put into the world and being like, okay, not feeling guilty, like letting that go so that you can look after number one. That's a really good point. Thank you. Kosi, can I flip it to you? A psychological, emotional hurdle that was affecting your creativity or motivation, and advice you would give to artists facing the same challenge.
Yes. Much like Sami, I do believe that I am still in the midst of the challenge. I had some notes down, and I had quite literally written, this question is stirring for me because, to be transparent, I have not overcome the challenge quite yet.
That's good.
I believe myself to be a highly emotional, a highly emotive artist and dancer, and I did find it hard, not just as a part of COVID, or as a result of COVID, but as a result of sort of what we're seeing across the United States and Canada as well, in terms of oppression and discrimination and the extinguishing of lives, specifically Black lives. And that hit me in a different way. And like I said, to be transparent, that is something I still am working through even at this moment. But I will say, much like Sami, it is about giving yourself time to work through those emotions. They don't go anywhere unless you take the time. And the advice mostly here from myself is to fight the urge to compartmentalize parts of you. To believe that you are an artist and that you are a human being. I do believe that they are hand in hand, as I hope a lot of people agree with. And so to sort of take the time to figure out what's affecting you as you identify yourself, it also bolsters the art to be able to represent yourself, to be able to unify and to gather and rally people around you, to rally your community around you so that we can continue with each other. But I think it starts with the individual. And so to wrap it off all in a pretty bow, it has taken a toll, a massive one, to the point where I did not believe that I could create in this time, and I still have not done much, but I take it day by day, as I hope everyone does, and sort of celebrate the little wins. Little wins being, I got up today, I moved today, I shared with whoever today, and just take it from there. Sorry, I'm a little.
No, lots of love, and thank you so much for bringing so much to that question. And like, I know, like, you see the chat blowing up right now. People so resonate with what you're saying, and I think there's so much power in naming it and naming the struggle and matching like that idea of, like, you know, for so many artists as well, it is a source of release and an escape and a getaway and an expression of joy and connection. And like, to be, you know, finding ourselves in a year like 2020 and like all these like important things that need our attention and need our efforts, and to not have the release that we rely on to feel okay or to come back to ourselves or to step out of ourselves. I think as well, like you said, Kosi, the small wins and like being easy on yourselves, where it's like, shit is not the same this year. People don't feel the same. People can't move the same way. And that's, you know, really powerful, really powerful. Thank you so much for sharing, Kosi. I really appreciate that. Can I flip it to Arthur? Arthur, hurdles that you've overcome this year that have affected your creativity and motivation, and advice you would give to dancers facing the same challenge?
First off, I just want to send my condolences to Sami and your family. Like, big love to you guys, and I hope you're on this healing journey, and your brother is watching down over you. So bless. Like I said, I'm fortunate that like my dance and my organizing isn't affecting my income, so it didn't hit me in that way, but it did. And with the accumulation, like as Kosi said, with the extermination of Black lives, and the uprising of everybody who is standing by people with people who are suffering oppression, Black lives, Indigenous lives. That's definitely affected me in a personal way, and like you said, take it day by day. Really, understanding how you're feeling for that day. If you don't want to move, you don't have to move. But if you throw a track down and you feel like moving, let it happen. My motivation for moving was halted because when people were talking about Black Lives Matter and how we're all guests to the culture, I had to take a step back and reassess how my relationship with hip hop, with Black peoples, with Indigenous peoples is, and question if I should be dancing, if I should be breaking, if I should be throwing these jams, or if I should be handing it off to a Black dancer or a Black organizer, but also understanding what I've done in the past as well has been helpful to creating, to helping build up the Vancouver dance scene. So it's been a very interesting time. Yeah, not knowing if I should be expressing myself the way I have been, but also knowing that when I do dance, the lives that these dances are built off of is always at the back of my mind. And the inspiration of where it comes from is always at the back of my mind. And I think this is completely different from what I wrote down for my notes, but I think this is where this conversation should go, in the sense that taking time for yourself and really assessing your relationship with the dance, yourself, the music, the community, and seeing where you fit in and if you're being helpful or harmful. Because a lot of us, I can say, have been unknowingly harmful, without giving a second thought to it. Using this time to take a step back and see what our place is in the world, in the hip hop community, I think has been helpful for me to really push things forward in the right way, with talking to the right people, and considering everybody who has put work into the community before I have, yeah.
Yeah.
Weird stream of thought, but yeah.
No, it's again, I really appreciate everybody's candor and honesty and like bringing so much of these like challenging conversations and things that you have overcome, that you are overcoming. I think that's what this platform is all about. And I'm really happy that the conversation has gone in this way. I do want to do just like a check for everybody in the room. Make sure you're still breathing. Shake it out if you need to, take a breath, look after yourselves. If you need a glass of water, if you want to take a walk, if you want to take a second to think about someone close to you, go ahead and do that. And I'm going to say thank you again to everybody on that question. I really appreciate it. And again, there's so much strength and bravery that you're bringing to the conversation for the benefit of people in the room. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that, everyone. I'm going to keep going ahead and talking about maybe the part of dance that's been, of course, most affected, like, you know, events, battles, jams, live events, auditions, anything we were doing in person. And I did name this section Silver Linings While We Wait, because, you know, as much as we can dwell on the challenge, we can also be the resilient artists and creatives and community members that we are and think about, okay, I got this time and everything's all messed up, but what am I going to do with it? And there are so many types of in-person events that are really fundamental to the dance industry, you know, like we said, battles and jams, you know, relying on the crowd, close crowd for energy, for revenue, for ticket prices, you know, a big part of how people get paid. Thinking about auditions, casting calls, where you got all kinds of people coming and going, that's disappeared. And there's this sense, you know, there's definitely a sense that people sometimes patiently, sometimes, you know, not patiently, or like sick of the Zoom room, waiting for the green light to return to these types of events. So again, in the spirit of resilience, I want to ask a question to a couple folks on the panel about finding opportunity in the face of this challenge. And so what I want to ask, I'm going to put this question to Arthur, Kosi, and Amy, who all have experiences in the dance space with different types of events. So I'm going to ask this question. Tell us about one event or type of event that you've organized or participated in. Tell us about how it has adapted in being moved to the virtual space. And if you can, as a part of your answer, at least one positive outcome of the event being delivered in its adapted form. So obviously not the same, never going to be the same, but one positive outcome. What was the shift to online, and what was one positive outcome of it being delivered in an adapted form? So if I can put it to Arthur first, like you said, Vancouver Street Dance Festival, you guys have been doing some awesome adaptations. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we're working on our 9th festival, so next year's 10, hopefully it happens, and it would have been this weekend. We locked down our judges, our DJs. By March, we had our judges, DJs, and we're about to book our venues and, you know, lock down all those things. We applied for all our, a couple of our grants. We actually even turned down, we were asked to retract our grant application from one grant, but we also received one before things locked down. So we were kind of in the interesting space where, like I said, it was kind of nice that we knew that we didn't have to do an in-person event, but at the same time we were kind of hoping, like, what if things are okay in the summer? Do we still do it? We have a little bit of money to do it. And then when we really start to look at the global situation, we're like, it's online or it's nothing. And we wanted to do the battle to give people that outlet. Like I said earlier, not everybody is in the right space to do it, but you know, you offer it and the people who want to take it will take it. Sure. That's really where we were coming from. We weren't expecting hundreds of people to enter. We weren't expecting people from all over the world to enter. We kind of like offered it up to whoever was following us, and whoever entered. So we had like 20 plus breakers, 50 poppers, 30-ish hip hop dancers, 30 plus backers, 40 lockers, and 20 house dancers. So, and these are people from all over the world: Canada, the US, Japan, Korea, Spain, the Philippines. Like if there's one thing that I could say was positive, is that it opened it up to these people who may have not had the chance to travel to Vancouver to experience the live event. you know, and the other thing is we also wanted to be different. We didn't want to just do the regular battles like everybody else is doing online. I saw a couple of interesting events like Break Free Worldwide. They did like a live stream of their event. And
what was that? I just want to make sure we can put it in the chat.
Yeah, Break Free Worldwide.
Worldwide.
Yeah, they're doing it live. So they had competitors from all over the world, but you had to be, you know, if you were in Japan, you had to be awake at like 2 a.m. to battle somebody who's in LA, who's like who's like in the mid-afternoon or whatever the time zones were, right?
Right.
We didn't have the infrastructure to make that happen. Right. But at the same time, we didn't want to just do an Instagram battle where you'll post your clip on your story and then everybody gets to watch with low production. One of our board members, David Chen, he's a video editor. He came up with this amazing idea of making it like Street Fighter. Genius. So yeah, all of our battles that we did this year are on our Instagram page, and we're gonna upload it to our YouTube page in the next couple of days. So if you want to follow us at _VSDF_, check him out there. Like, he did amazing work creating like the battle brackets and making it look like a video game. And it was a whole team effort, since we had multiple styles, people talking to everybody. Like, we had one person per style, coordinating with the people who made it through, coordinating with the judges, and then trying to get that to all the information to our video editor, who put it all together in a timely manner to make sure that we got everything done within a certain timeline. People weren't waiting too long. And once we were about to start we split it up into two-week sections. When we were about to start the second week, that's when George Floyd was murdered, and we knew we had to do a hard stop. We had to take a break and give everybody time to reflect and give time for the Black voices to be amplified, and we didn't want to crowd that space. So we delayed it for 2 weeks and then restarted actually the day after Juneteenth. So yeah, it went surprisingly well. You know, our video editor, he was stressed, but he did an amazing job, and honestly, it wouldn't have done as well as it did without him. I think it would have been just a low budget online battle. But yeah.
It looked amazing. It looked amazing. Yeah, I watched a bunch of the videos the other day. The graphics were tough. The dancers were amazing. I think that's so awesome that you guys found a way to put that online. And like, despite, again, obviously it not being the right vibe, you know, creating a space for those dancers, like you said. And so interesting. You're like, oh, we weren't really expecting that many people. But then like you had like over 100 people want to battle, which is kind of cool. It's like, yeah, people are, you know, let's not lose faith. People are out there and they want to battle. They want to keep dancing. They want to be seen. They want to see other people. So that's so sick that you guys found a way to recreate that kind of battle structure in an online space.
Yeah, exactly. And like, we couldn't have done it without, like, I see her, Sandra's on the chat here. So shout out to Sandra. She was one of our DJs, and she provided dope music, her and Jerry. And then I think Keegan's in here too. So he won the locking battle. So just like dope energy from all around to make what could have been, you know, a flop into a great success. You know, it was all on the individuals who really put their time and energy into competing and like pushing the battles, sharing the battles. And that's how made it a huge success.
Awesome. Yeah. Arthur, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Make sure y'all go and check out, follow VSDF. We got the Instagram handle in the chat there. But I'm going to flip it up to Amy. Amy, from the side, yeah, like we're saying, like casting calls and auditions. Like, what's that look like? What can you tell us? Tell us about how that has flipped into the online space, and if there's any kind of positive to the shift.
Yep. I think I'll start with the positive stuff, is that when you're doing your own auditions at home, you're in control of what you put out. So if you need to do 22 takes to get it right, you can. Although I will say I had to do a panel where I had to do a monologue, and I haven't done one in 20 years. And it was impossible. So it really gave me perspective on what it is to be an actor. Sometimes just trust your gut, do 1 or 2 takes and move on. Because I think I did like 27, and then I changed to a different monologue, and then I changed my outfit, and then I changed my hair, and then I just failed in every way because I just, I could critique and judge myself forever. And sometimes when you're in front of a panel immediately, you got to bring your best right there, and your nerves kick in, and you're just, but it's nice to be able to control what you put out there. One of the greater challenges, even looking around at the panelists here, is everybody has a different space. Yeah. Not many people have a dance studio in their house or access to a dance studio or a dance space. So I know from doing a bunch of panels with casting directors is at this point, everyone is open. You just do your best audition possible. I know for myself as a choreographer, asking people for things, I'm not going to ask right now for like Arthur to drop and do, you know, I want to see your best breaking moves in your, I don't even know if you're in a bedroom or an office, but like, you know, yeah, you have to modify, or if the person can go outside, I'm also not expecting you to scrape your knees, right? Yeah. So we have to be open. Ideally, and this is maybe another question coming up, but ideally, as dancers, you may have footage of yourself just from life or from when you were in a dance studio. So there's a way to edit that together. Here's me now. I'm the least cool person on the panel. Here's my bathing, and then here's the video of me doing my like, you know, top rock, whatever. But do your best with editing, do your best with what you've got to put your best foot forward. And casting people are more open to seeing, you know, we're all stuck at home. The casting people are stuck at home as well. Yeah. So that's a kind of a positive, is you are in control of what you're doing.
And can I just ask, Amy, in terms of how the model has shifted? So it would have been, you know, previously a casting call, everybody's coming X place, X time. Like, what does it actually look like now?
I haven't, it's just getting back. So the last audition I did was actually for 6 to 9-year-old children. And I wish I could screen share and show you some of them. I should have thought to ask permission, because it's joy and adorableness. And, they all had to teach a dance move, and then they had to do their signature move and strike a pose. And it's the most fun. Like, this one girl, as she was doing it, she actually like bumped into the walls and was like, sorry. And I'm like, God, I love it. So yes, you'll put out the audition notice and ask the performer to send a self-tape of themselves doing whatever is required, whether it's dancing, acting, singing. And I think one of the biggest things as actors doing these self-tape auditions is you must read the instructions. If you know, in the audition room, we're there together and you watch what other people are doing, but I'm very specific, you know, introduce yourself and then do this and then do that. And some people forget and they just do it in their own order. And if I'm looking at 100 now, for me, to see 50 dancers in a room, I would get a really big room, but I would take, you know, anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes to teach whatever the combo is. And then you watch everybody back and it goes by much more quickly. But for me to sit and view 100 3-minute audition videos, if you don't follow the instructions, I'm going to probably skip you because there's somebody beside you who did. And that's one way to wheedle it down, because I'm not meeting you in person.
Right.
Another maybe bonus is that it's hard for producers to tell how tall people are.
Oh,
So
right.
it's like, you know, we were looking at the children too and going, well, that kid's 4'9" and the others are 3'1", is he gonna stick out like a sore thumb? And I'm like, so we ended up, I suggested to her to put tape on a wall, just get that green painter's tape, and then look, and so just the little boy who's a little taller, just push him more to the back, perspective on camera. So that's one of the challenges for casting people, but
interesting.
It's good. I'm always going to prefer, as a choreographer, to see people dance and see them do whatever is needed for that job, whether it's you know, the next step, kids doing the freestyle, or you know, Broadway style, very intricate choreography. It's so much better when we're all together. And like you were saying, it was Sami with your community. It's the point of dancing is a community. And I guess, yeah, things are shifting. They're slowly starting to do recalls, but everybody's going to have their 6-foot distance and don't touch this.
Well, I think it's a really interesting thing, Amy, even again, this insight for people in the space to know. One of the things that I've certainly experienced is like, when everything moves online and I see what other people are doing, I'm like, oh my God, should I be doing that? Oh my God, should I be doing that? Am I behind? Am I missing out? Am I missing something? Like, and I mean, I try to limit my time on social media because I just feel like comparison just will thief your joy so quickly. But to hear somebody say, you know what, actually, there's just been a huge pause. It's not that there's all these casting calls and people are being booked and you're not.
Totally.
It's actually nobody's getting booked right now, which is
doing anything. And it is like, I'll jump back to the other question about just what are you doing for your health and stuff. I've been doing nothing, and I was like, yeah, I'll get in shape and I'm gonna I did nothing, and I still can't really. I was set, I'm gonna do a 30-day yoga challenge, so I did one, and then day 2 was actually 4 days later. So we're all in a different spot. And I'm about to go back to a ballet movie, and the lead actress used to dance with the Kirov Ballet, and they do have a dance double for her just in case, you know, she gets tired, because she has to shoot all her point solos basically in one day. And nobody's had their point shoes on, and nobody's even been in a dance studio. So we're all going to roll in on Sunday morning, and well, they're 20, so they probably didn't put on a COVID-15 like maybe I did. But we haven't been in a dance studio, anybody, and now we're shooting dancing. So there's only so much you can do if you push your dining room table aside.
And I think that's a really good point, Amy, to again, just kind of like coming back to like how comforting it is to know that the struggle is shared.
Oh my gosh.
And that everybody, you know, I think there's so much value again in like naming, like, hey, this is not, you're not behind, you're not doing it wrong, you're not missing something.
No.
I'm just keeping an eye on the time.
I know, I could talk forever.
The time is gonna fly. But I want to flip it to Kosi quickly. Kosi, any events that you participated in? Any kind of silver linings that you saw to what that shift looked like?
Definitely have not been participating in anything.
Okay.
Been taking care of the mental above all else, but I have been seeing a lot of things going on, and one particular one that sticks out is an event that sort of was birthed in COVID time, and it's called the League Dance Online. So it's pretty much a battle similar to what VSDF has done, but what's so refreshing about this battle is that it is actually in close collaboration with some of the best house music DJs in the world.
Oh, nice.
So what happens is, of course, it's a regular format, 1v1 competitive battle. But what happens is they've sort of reimagined the dance in the battle space and had the musicians, these DJs, these producers as the judges.
Oh, sick.
So rather than, you know, a one dancer subjectively judging another dancer and how well they dance to a piece of music, it is now the DJ, the person who's made this music, judging for themselves how well you've interpreted their work, which is, I think, is fantastic. Yeah. because I do believe that it's our duty as dancers to do the music justice. So I found that really positive. Yeah, it's in the chat right now, the league battle online. I found that really positive, and I found that really fascinating, that imagining. But so what they do is, instead of sort of posting your clip and it being posted to this league battle dance online, everybody sort of gets on at the same time, gets into the digital space, and you go live in your own room, wherever you've decided. You go live, everybody comes over to you, watches your round, you do your rounds, and then you go live to the other person. And I think there's something comforting about that, being in your own space and being able to know what's going on. Because for anybody who's new to battling, a big fear, huge fear, is the fact that you're in a space and you might not know anybody. Right? And it's new, it's fresh, and you're being watched. But you know, to have that sort of comfort of being in your own room and knowing the dimensions, knowing how far you can reach, how far back you can fall, all of that.
For sure.
I think it's a very, very positive thing, as well as the fact that now you can get feedback from these masters of music who are right there in real time to say, well, I love that you did this, you know, not so much that this person wins, but to hear it from the people who have created this piece of music, I think is also incredible.
I really love that. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed, you know, working at Unity, that I have found so interesting is that the circumstances prescribe so much. They're so rigid. It's like, this is not optional. There are so many things that we just cannot do. So what are we left with? And like, just embracing like, you know, so many things that we thought were immutable norms. This is how it's done. This is the way that it works best. This is the only way it goes. And to see how this has like broken down so many of those conventions is really beautiful. I feel like that's such an interesting, and I mean, and the experience for a dancer, like you said, of like not necessarily having someone who's looking through a dancer's eyes, someone who's more, yeah, like you said, looking at that interpretation, like what a cool thing.
For real. And for me, having attended a lot of battles, a lot of battles, something that shakes up, like you said, those conventions, breaks those rigid lines, and allows us to really think more about what we're giving and how we're representing music and what our dance means to us and how it's even being viewed. So I think that's invaluable feedback. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Kosi. Okay, keeping an eye on the time here. I think we're probably going to go. Does anybody have a total hard stop right at 8:30? No? Okay, so we're probably going to go a couple of minutes over, but I am going to ask all the panelists to keep to your 2 to 3 minutes for the next questions. Okay, so the next question, we're going to get Roy here to chime in, as well as Sami and Kosi again. So I want to talk a little bit about teaching and training. So obviously it's such an important revenue stream for so many artists, for so many dancers. So again, I wanted to take a moment. I think, I mean, again, also, you know, at Unity teaching, you know, we've got some of our awesome team online with us today who have been navigating and like, what does it look like to teach online? But I wanted to kind of ask from your perspective, is there a skill that dancers are using to teach online that they can, or okay, what's one skill that dancers can refine through teaching virtually that will eventually be applicable when we return to kind of like what the new normal is? And then the other part of the question is, what's one thing that people should not bother trying to recreate when like teaching online? Like, what's one thing we can just stop stressing about because it's never going to work online? And what's one silver lining of like, this is actually, as a teacher, as a trainer, this is something that I can actually grow and improve on that's going to make me a stronger teacher when I can actually be in class with my students again. So I'm going to flip it to Roy first, if that's okay. Roy?
Yeah, absolutely. This was I don't know, it was a bit of a difficult question for me to answer because I don't regularly take class in the studio setting nor online either. But just based on what I'm noticing, especially from a virtual standpoint, I think one skill that I think teachers can kind of work towards or work on is to adapt to their like students' circumstances, right? So, you know, if you're teaching online and you notice that a student's space might not be as wide or as big as like in a studio setting, maybe try to build a skill to adapt to their circumstances. You know, in Ontario, as we, you know, we're slowly moving into stage 3, you know, I think studios are going to start placing tapes on the floor with like certain boxes that you can only dance within, right? And those you know, spaces might be only as big as someone's living room, right? So I guess maybe working on that skill. In terms of maybe not bother, you know, creating or perfecting, just, I don't know, maybe I think it's just as simple as like the choreography or the movement that you're given. I know the class experience has kind of shifted virtually, but you still have the permission to make mistakes online, right? You don't have to be perfect in studio, nor do you have to be perfect online. So I think that's kind of my take on this 2-parter.
Awesome. Thank you, Roy. I appreciate that. Can I flip it to Sami? Sami?
Yeah, well, in Ottawa, stage 3 had already happened. It's been going on for a couple of weeks. Again, like from almost, you know, the beginning of things had kind of had it in my mind that even when we are allowed to open in the summertime, I'm aiming for September, just because I think that there's been a rush of people, especially with like, you know, fitness studios, yoga studios, dance studios, just jumping into being able to catch up and make up that, you know, there's going to be room for error. There's going to be a lot of error. And I really wanted to take the time to see the ways that other people were starting to open up, adapt some things that were going to be applicable to us and make sense. I know like so we didn't do a lot of like outward, like, you know, dropping classes online, but we have our intensive group, which is like our crew program at the studio. We got popping, hip hop, and breaking crew. So the kids come together a couple times a week. And then on the Friday, all the kids usually work together. So all of our instructors had still been working with our intensive kids online and giving them, you know, different types of lessons, as well as different types of like homework. And I think that that's one of the things that maybe we can adapt, is that there's already been a big push for some of the, you know, educational programs like schools and stuff that are going to be doing these hybrid programs, that maybe it's a way of instructors thinking about the curriculum that they're trying to teach in terms of their dance programming, so that they're not just focused on that 1 hour of class, but what are some other ways that you can spread that out so that your kids can continue, or your students can continue to learn outside of the online sphere. So it doesn't have to just be in front of the screen, because, you know, I mean, like I have a hard time focusing sometimes. I'm always fidgeting and things. So sitting in front of a screen and doing something is going to be hard for me. That's why I like dancing. I don't have to focus on one thing. But that's something that I had thought about as well, is like, what are some hybrid ways that you can apply your dance classes? So is there a way that you could do, okay, well, here's the lesson for your skill. Can you work on that skill throughout the week? And then maybe later in the week, we can come together and put it in a choreography. So say you're working on some popping, and like this week's lesson is waves. We're just going to practice waves. Here's like your base lesson for your waves. Here's like what your homework is. 1, 2, 3, like practice these different kinds of waves, create your own little bit. We're going to come back on the Friday. We're going to reapply that lesson, and maybe we'll put it into a choreography bit, or maybe we'll talk about what ways that we've created something new. So these are some things that I was really thinking about in terms of adapting our programming moving forward. So we might not be able to just have everybody in one space, but there's other ways to work around that. Another idea that I had, and I'll share this too, is hybrid classes. So say you do have an in-class choreography lesson, is there a way that you could have a camera set up so that that instructor, while they're still teaching a class live to people, but they can only teach to half the room, is there a way that you could also focus that as a live program so people from all over can get it? Because the energy that you're giving to a screen is not going to come back to you. And I think that's one of the things that the dancers who are used to teaching in class is missing out on and getting frustrated with when they have to teach in a room by themselves to a screen that's not giving them any energy back, and they're being animated like they would in a class, but now they're getting exhausted from how much energy they're giving and how little they're getting back. So these are some ways that I've thought about adapting things when we move forward, hybrid classes, hybrid lessons, and thinking about things like that, because it's not just going to be one or the other. I think when we move forward, there are going to be some people that are still going to be happy to do things at home, but there are some people that are still yearning for real life experience. So how can you make that work for everybody?
I think that's so, Joe, I'm going to get to Kosi in just 2 seconds, but I love both Sami and Roy's answers in terms of like what you were saying, Roy, about this idea of really what you're talking about is accessibility. Like how can teachers be more conscientious of the circumstances through which dancers are working? And like, what a great way to start putting yourself into someone else's shoes and someone else's space and thinking, what are the constraints that might bind this person that I can see and that I can't see? And I think that, across all industries and across, moving towards accessibility being at the forefront of our minds in everything that we do, that is 100,000% a skill that people can be working on in this space that's going to make them stronger teachers and when we get back to normal. And same, like you said, Sami, getting folks accustomed to the idea that, okay, when the 1 hour dance class finishes, my homework isn't done as a teacher, thinking about how do I inspire my students to continue their learning between classes? How do I create exercises that they can do on their off time and like inspire them to be motivated and practicing and improving, not just within the hour of the class, but taking that into their own hands at home. For sure, something that's like the idea of whether it's the hybrid lesson or the hybrid lesson for sure. I feel like that's so valuable. What a great suggestion as something that people could think about working on now that's going to make them stronger teachers when we can all be together again. Kosi, can I flip it to you as well?
For sure. And I want to thank Roy and Sami for their answers.
I wrote notes.
Yeah. Had to. Just to echo them, of course, being mindful of all the abilities, visible, non-visible, whatever's going on with the people who are coming to you. Something that I found very interesting is learning how to widen my vocabulary. Because there are some people who really do learn best with description rather than visually. And of course, with the video and being flipped and not flipped and the exhaustion of being on screen all the time, sometimes all it takes is a proper description of what is necessary in order to get the best outcome. So I've definitely employed that a lot. But I've also found that I'm very particular about who I teach, because I understand that I do best in certain spaces, and my ability to teach heightens by who comes to me and is very specific. So definitely widening of the vocabulary, being mindful of the person. And some of the ideas that have been different going forward for me is understanding that sometimes you don't want to move your body in front of the camera. Especially if you have kids, maybe.
Yeah.
They're going, it's high energy. And sometimes you have to be mindful of flipping it and going in a different way. And something that I'm huge on is the music of it. So I've started employing practices of showing sampling. I'm not a DJ, I'm not a producer, nothing of the sort, but I found that it fascinates people, students, to hear where music has come from and where it is now, what we're dancing to and where it came from, and sort of the alchemy of it getting to where it is. And it gets them excited to move their body, to hear that journey and to be able to represent it physically. So that's something that I've been doing, and I found very, 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 very helpful. Something that I think we should try to get rid of or not try to recreate is this high energy, high impact, let's go, 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 especially in a battle. We know that, sort of the person with the highest energy catches the eyes first, oh, wow, you're doing that, right? But it changes with a video, it changes with perspective. And another idea that I've been implementing is the idea of perspective. What does it look like to dance to this camera, but also simultaneously a camera from behind you? How does your body look in the space? And I've been doing that with a few students, and it's really changed things. So yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because I feel like, I guess when you're in person, oftentimes it's like student teacher and we're eye to eye, right? But when you're looking at different perspectives, like just such interesting ways to find value in the different perspectives that you're being forced to look through, and like what can you learn about your own dance and what can you learn about what you see from others. Like that's so cool. These are like the best silver linings ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It came from sort of being in a battle space and in real time someone suggesting to me that I share with everybody in the room rather than just the person across from me. Right. And that idea, sort of, the seed was planted to think about perspectives, where I'm being viewed, how I'm being viewed, and how I'm sharing the energy equally across the room. So,
interesting. Very cool. Thank you so much. Okay, we got 2 questions left here. I got one question for Amy, one question for Roy. I know that Amy sort of spoke to this a little bit either. It's my fault. I got ahead of myself. I got curious. I got curious in advance. But I think it's really awesome, you know, that we have your perspective here today. And so I think the one part that we kind of answered is how has COVID altered casting directors, how casting directors and agents are finding and casting dancers. And, you know, your response to that was like, well, they haven't really been, there hasn't been a lot of that. No. And you already gave some good points about, you know, like read the instructions carefully. I think that's really valuable. But there was a second part to the question, which again speaks to this idea of like, we can't interact, we can't be doing the same things we were doing before, but we can do things if we feel it in us that will move us forward when things get back to normal. I feel like there's going to be some amazing, crazy battles when we get back. Like people have just been like polishing this or polishing that in their back pocket for as soon as they come out. But so my question to you, Amy, is what can dancers do during these months to prepare themselves for auditions and castings when things return to whatever the new normal may be?
Well, I think one of the main things, and there was a question about just agents and what people look for in general. Even if I was watching a battle, if all I do is come out and do this repeatedly, I feel like I would lose, first of all. But I have to be able to do this, and I have to be able to do this. Like I can't just come out and only do my one skill. So if you have the chance now to practice tutting or something that, exactly. Sami just totally rocking that head wang. Take the time, if you're at all inspired to not just watch Netflix, take the time to try and you know what you're great at. So of course that's the easy stuff to practice, but pick something that's hard. For me, I got obsessed with tap dancing when I was in grade 6 and I didn't stop. And a couple years ago, I was part of a workshop and we had somebody in teaching gliding. And that guy was like, he goes, I used to just go around and around and around and around and around the basketball court, just gliding. And he got really good at gliding. And then we had people trying to learn tutting, and some people, I mean, you don't just pick it up and do it. You got to practice that consistently. So just expand your palette. You know, there's, I know you want to share things on the side. There's even this woman on Facebook. I'll look up her name in a second, but she's Debbie, and she's doing like at-home ballet classes, and you're lying on the floor. Why not, as street dancers, street style people, go take a ballet class, see what that feels like. Which different muscles does that work? It just, you know, in your battle, you need to show highs and lows and freeze and moves. So the more you bring to the table, take an online acting class, just expand your palette. Again, you need to feel motivated to do that. And that ties back to the whole psychological effects of COVID. But I don't know, maybe get a little group of people and be like, today, let's, I don't know, practice something. And the amazing thing right now is that everything is online. It's like you were saying, Rebecca, you sign up for like 50 classes. But you can take a class right now with somebody in Vancouver that you've never been able to do that if you're from the East Coast. You can take a class with somebody in England. You can take, I think it's Instagram every day. The National Ballet of Canada has ballet. Like, when do you ever get to do that? So that's, you know, do what you can to expand. I don't even think I'm answering the question right now.
No, you are. You totally are. No, I think.
Fair.
Well,
yeah,
no,
I don't know.
That's invaluable. And like the sense of like, well, two things that you said, like one is the idea of like, okay, because we're all in like, what good can we take from this?
Yeah.
And one, yeah, like you said, like for circumstances that people were working through, never are they going to have as much access to free learning as they have right now. And being relegated to the confines of your home, like what, like for some people at least, you know, it's like if you have a bedroom or a space where it's like you don't have to go through the awkwardness of learning a new style of dance with other people around you. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
You take it from your bedroom. Yeah.
I don't know if the new norm is going to mean that we're not going to be dancing together anymore. Is there going to be no slow dancing? Like, that's just crazy to me. I worry as a choreographer, everything I do is either couples dancing or large groups of people dancing. Yeah. It looks so weird in movies if there's like, you know, the couple in love are just far apart and then the group behind them is like, you can't even do that. So I hope the new norm is that we go back to normal with dancing. Just the new norm includes put a mask on and wash your hands more and let's take care of each other. I hope that's the new norm.
I was reading, because as a non-dancer, as an only non-dancer on the panel here, I read like a whole bunch of articles, like to try and make sure that I got, you know, questions right and that I could do a decent job of hosting this great conversation. And I was reading an article that was talking about how after the Great Depression, after the flu, the Spanish flu after World War I in 1918 was a time when people could get back together. There was like this flurry of new dance forms that were created. People were so like enlivened to be back in one another's company that, like, you know, creativity was explosive and like all these new forms came forward. And I'm like, yeah, I hope it's like that too. Like I said, you know, people have been at home polishing up these new things to like unveil to one another. So I hope that's the case as well, Amy.
And as singers and musicians, try a different style. Just and to become employable is just to have more in your bag of tricks. It's for any job. Even if I want to go work at Bank of Montreal, I can't just know how to do adding. I need to do much more than that, right? Like, so
I want to do subtraction.
I can't. Yeah, I only dancers count to 8, so I'm gonna practice for my job at BMO that I make it up to. What is it that Trump had to do? Count from 100 backwards by 7 or whatever. Anyway, I'll work on my math, but.
Awesome.
I think just do your best to be prepared, to be employable, because if there's only 3 jobs next year and they are for people that are people who could break dance and tap dance, and then you got to be able to do both. Otherwise, the job's not, you know, it's going to the.
For sure.
I know that was a weird combination. I just picked the worst thing I could think of.
What are you casting is my question.
You know, break tap. That
okay, I'm gonna flip it over now based on kind of what Amy has said. I'm gonna take it down to Roy, and just again, in case anybody is not familiar with Dance Plug, maybe we can throw that in the chat as well. Again, I'm non-dancer, but I follow Dance Plug, and I think there's so many interesting business savvy tips on there. And so I want to flip it to Roy. And ask the question, like, what are some important elements of a dancer's online presence from that kind of professional perspective? And what should they be concentrating on in order to stand out and showcase their craft in the virtual space, like through their socials and stuff?
So I think the first thing that I think all dancers, or just all artists in general, should realize that they themselves are a business, right? And with that comes a brand. So, you know, with Dance Plug, for example, I mean, we shifted our marketing strategy right at the beginning of COVID. And I'll be sharing a few Instagram accounts that really helped me along the way in terms of like how to utilize what resources are kind of available, whether it be on Instagram or on TikTok. And there's something that I'm happy to kind of share like as well. And this was announced a couple of days ago, but Instagram is going to start bringing out something called Reels, which is very similar to what TikTok does. So what they're going to do is try to compete with each other to kind of see, you know, who can get the upper hand in that kind of realm. But in terms of, I guess, like what artists can kind of do online, when you're writing your bio, you want to put things that you are actually good at or you're great at. And then when it comes to your highlights, you want to maybe put in things like your skills. Maybe you're an acrobatic. Maybe you know how to tap. Maybe you know how to break. So those kinds of things. And then the other thing too is just not post like every day. Like don't feel the need to kind of post often, because that can kind of hinder you from a engagement standpoint. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think the other thing too, I think with regards to casting, I know we spoke about this in our podcast with Amy, but you know, when you go in for an audition, one of the things they do ask you to fill out is your Instagram account. And your Instagram account is essentially your online resume, if you think about it, right? You know, some casting directors might use your Instagram account as maybe a factor in whether or not you get the job, right? And sometimes it can be as simple as how many followers you have. You know, I know a lot of people might not agree with that, but at the same time, it's like, you know, because we've kind of shifted into this whole social media realm, those are some things to kind of like, I guess, keep in mind when you have any sort of online presence, right? You want to just make sure you upkeep your brand and you stay true to that.
Right. Interesting. Amazing. Thank you, Roy. Okay, so that brings us 8:45. I knew it was going to go long. There was even, I considered putting another question at the end for all of the panelists, but I was like, I think this is going to be enough. But yeah, does anybody have any just sort of quick final parting words, whether it's of encouragement that you want to share with people in this space? No pressure, but if anybody had any final kind of offerings.
I just want to touch up on like some of the bits that Roy was talking about in terms of like, as an artist, like you're a brand. I think that this is also a really good time for us artists to not just focus on our art, not just focus on where we're going to get back with that, but to educate ourselves on different business practices, on different financial ways to support ourselves, because those are going to be the infrastructure and foundation that'll help us out in the future. And that's often something that's missed with artists, but I think in terms of like hip hop and street dance artists and just like, you know, everybody within our world, is that we have a hard time gravitating and accepting some of those things, that this is the time, you know, pick up a book, read some of that stuff, check out some podcasts, learn about ways to brand yourself, learn about ways that you can save your money, learn about other ways you can invest your cash. Because when it comes down to something like this happening again, you want to be able to stay balanced, and it's not going to happen with just work. You got to find other ways to keep that float.
I want to add to that is that learning about dance history is super important. And that's when Kosi especially brought up the Black Lives Matter as well. And the new way that people can teach. When you're finished the class, maybe give a tidbit or something, go home and look up something. It drives me crazy when the 18-year-olds that I meet lately, all they know is dancing, you know, that they see at Millennium, and all they know is what's on Instagram. There's so much more history there to find out where we come from. And, you know, my entire life was watching, as soon as movies became talkies, I've watched every dance thing that's ever existed. And I'm still learning about dance history, right? Like, and with what's going on in the world with Black Lives Matter, but don't just be that. There's so much more out there, and it just makes you a better person, but then also we grow from our history.
Absolutely.
You know, and we can help each other, help the future generation.
Absolutely.
Otherwise,
please think of the children.
Yeah, that's my lecture. Go teach yourself something. Watch Flashdance and Beyond, something with Nicholas Brothers and Shirley Temple and Bojangles, and anyway, God laugh.
Amy, thank you so much. Any other final? Yeah, Kosi.
There's an African principle. It's Sankofa. Means in order to go forward, you must draw back. And I think that's exactly what Amy was saying. You have to look at where we're coming from in order to push forward. Whether that be in educating yourself about the rich Black history of dances or music or anything like that, in order to understand, and I wrote it here as a note, but pretty much in order to understand your role as a part of the collective mind, you have to be able to look into the history, and it informs the way that you stay the course, you know. And I think that's another thing. We all have different strengths. Yes, we can bolster our weaknesses, but we all have different strengths and the things that make us who we are. And I think that knowing them and owning them allows us to stay the course and be that for other people, so that in the event that this does happen again, we know who to go to in certain situations. We know that in this group, this panel, I can go to Amy for this, to Arthur, and so on and so forth. So definitely taking the time to understand how you play a part in the collective mind, the history of the thing, in order to inform yourself to go forward.
Amazing. Thank you, Kosi. I really appreciate that. Okay, unless anybody else wants to jump in, I'm going to say a huge thank you to all of the panelists. Thank you so much for bringing so much to this and for like prepping and looking at the questions and everything. It's been really a joy to hear what you all have to share. I want to thank TD again, the TD Ready commitment, for supporting this panel series and for supporting Unity's artist training and development work. Next week, quick reminder, we're doing the same place, same time. We're going to be talking to graph writers and muralists next week for our Graph Life panel. Yeah, so we got some really dope people lined up for that as well. Make sure you follow unitycharity.com. Go Unity. And finally, yeah, you will be redirected automatically to the evaluation survey. So if you do have 30 seconds to fill it in, we would so appreciate it. And yeah, that's it, folks. That's us for today. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Dance battle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maddie.
Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you. That was fun. Mwah, mwah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Peace out, y'all.
Bye.
Yo.